everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is your host, Gianni DePoce, and I'm joined this week by the one and only, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Raymond Merriman. How are you doing, Ray?
I'm doing fine, Johnny. Nice to be with you today.
Indeed. Thanks for joining. So the timing of this discussion is auspicious, to say the least. We're coming up to a critical reversal date period next week. A lot of potent geocosmic signatures, a lot of markets looking like they could exhibit reversals. We had Saturn ingress into Pisces this past week. Next week, we have aspects like Mars square Neptune, Sun opposite Neptune, and Venus going into Taurus and squaring Pluto on the same day. So what is your take on the geocosmics, Ray, before we start looking at these markets?
Well, I think it's, as you just mentioned and suggested, is one of the most important time bands of the year. The orb of influence is in effect now. It actually started today, and I think it goes late as March 24th. We've already seen a couple markets make what look to be primary bottoms and test to them with all kinds of divergence, especially the metals, gold and silver.
Yeah.
But as you look at the week ahead, I mean, well, one thing that people maybe aren't paying much attention to, because we haven't done much study on it, I know, and that is Jupiter conjunct Chiron tomorrow.
Yeah,
in Aries. And just a couple of days later, you're going to have Mars in a square aspect to the Sun and Neptune. Mars square Neptune, Mars square Sun. Yeah. So you got a lot of Aries, a lot of Mars energy in effect right now. And, I think that has a lot to do with themes of war, threats of war. But it also affects many financial markets that you and I are going to talk about today, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Okay, well, that's a fantastic segue into the first market we're going to look at, which is the Dow Jones. So ended the week on a defensive note here, the Dow selling off, but then a little bit of a bid into the close on Friday. But as you mentioned, Ray, we're in that key geocosmic time band. So what's your take on stocks right now?
Yeah, not only do you have the geocosmics setup coming up next week, but you're getting toward the end part of the primary cycle. So we're getting into our overlap period, which we love to see. And of course, most people are bearish right now. It feels like a panic's happening, but from what I understand of the correlation of geocosmic studies to stock market cycles, this feeling of a panic coming up, it could be, but it could be brief too. It's something that's peaking. We're peaking actually with the Jupiter conjunct Chiron, which is kind of a panic aspect, I would think, and the Sun and Neptune in Pisces, which can be hysteria. So my feeling is that I'm not sure the bottom is in yet, but I do think you're getting close to the bottom. The washout's underway, and we always subscribe to the idea that time is the most important. Time's more important than anything, more important than price. And right. You're in the time, so we're in the time band, and now we're going to start looking for price to be met. In fact, price is being met.
Well, there was some news this week, Ray, about some banks having some issues, especially regional banks. And, Venus going into Taurus, squaring Pluto, that is the start of a banking situation. And, if we look ahead 2 months from now, Jupiter going into Taurus, squaring Pluto the same day, Taurus rules banks. So I think that's a big theme of it too. It's Mars, and it's there's some Venus mixed in there as well.
Well, Uranus is in Taurus, and it's been there for a few years, still a couple of years ago, and that's also an aspect of bank runs. So you point out the Taurus energy coming up this week, especially Venus and Pluto going from Aries to Taurus, and Capricorn to Aquarius, and Chiron is conjunct Jupiter. And Uranus is in Taurus, ruling Venus. I mean, all of these things talk about stress on banks. And these have been in effect for a while, but they're especially peaking, I would say, between now and maybe the end of May. But this is one of the critical periods we're coming into this week.
Indeed. So now I have a chart of the NASDAQ up, and, we do have a case of intermarket bullish divergence in effect right now with respect to those lows in stocks at the end of December. But one of the things that I've noticed this week, Ray, is the fact that the NASDAQ is not exhibiting as much weakness as it was just even a couple weeks ago, ever since Saturn left the sign of Aquarius, which is something we've talked about at length in this weekly video series.
You've done a great job of alerting the listeners to the importance of Saturn in Aquarius and the pressure on technology stocks. and also with Saturn leaving it square to Uranus. You know, the other thing that's coming up, Johnny, in the next week is Jupiter is making its final semi-square to Saturn.
Yes.
And that would be the official cosmic end of the last 2 years of the Saturn Uranus square, because Jupiter's finishing finally that semi-square, and that's usually the retest period, which we had in October, November. We're getting it now again. And I think if you're looking just at geocosmics, there's reason to be optimistic about once we get past the next week or so.
I tend to agree. The next chart that I have up here is the 10-year Treasury note. Nice bid. You know, a couple weeks ago, this low actually happened the same day as we had the Venus-Jupiter conjunction. But, you know, we were in the time band for a primary cycle low, and, you know, we're getting that short flight to safety trade in the 10-year note. But we know that the trend has been bearish in bonds. So at this point, it looks more of like a corrective rally. But any take on what's going on in bond or currency markets right now, Ray?
Well, you know, Venus square Pluto does rule interest rate sensitive markets, and you are getting the correction in the other currencies right now. And what you just point out with the 10-year note, I mean, I haven't looked at this chart lately, but this is a good looking chart you've got up there with the 10-year notes. I mean, to me, that's like a Lindell wiggle we had a couple days ago. And that's, you know, that's what the kind of setup we like to see after a primary bottom, have a secondary low to it 1 to 2 weeks later at the most, and then take off. And that's exactly what you're showing on this chart.
Yeah. Yep, indeed. And then US dollar, you know, coming down a little bit here. And so, you know, to that point, a very Venusian, you know, period that we're in, and we're kind of starting to see those reversals. So, Ray, let's go ahead and look at copper, because I know you wanted to look at that market. So what are your thoughts on what's going on?
Well, you're coming into the 15th. Yeah, you're coming in the 15th week of the primary cycle. So you're in the time band for a primary cycle. Matthew Kaiser, who was a guest of yours a few weeks ago, you know, has done some excellent research on copper. And I think he's looking for a bottom here within the next 6 weeks, and maybe it comes up next week with Venus square Pluto. And you see,
that'd be nice.
The market is testing these lows here the last 2 or 3 weeks, so it wouldn't be a far cry for it to make a slightly lower low. And what I like about this chart, Johnny, I mean, copper usually leads the stock market, and copper's not getting clobbered as much as the stock market is getting clobbered. So this is kind of you know, an intermarket support system, I think, for the stock market, that copper's holding up so well compared to the stocks at this time.
Well, you know, you would think that if we're about to have a severe recession, copper would be crashing, but it's not. So that's to that point.
And I think it's more fear of a recession. You know, I mentioned the forecast speech that I gave a few weeks ago. You know, we had the question, do you think we'll make new highs and new lows? My attitude about coming in this year was that last year's highs and lows would be hard to break. Yeah. And I think we swing back and forth 2 or 3 times between those highs and lows. We've tested the highs of last year. Well, we test the highs of December anyway.
Right.
But basically 3,500 to 3,800 shows good resistance to Dow, and 2,800 to 28,000 to 30,000 is good support in the Dow. I think we're going to trade back and forth in those ranges this year.
Yeah. Well, Ray, I know everyone loves to hear your thoughts on the precious metals market. So big rallies in gold and silver this week. So what's going on in that world?
There's your Lindell wiggle, isn't it? In gold, it's perfect. I mean, gold makes a secondary low. It didn't take out the low of last week. Silver did take it out, and they both took off on Friday. And I think that might be a sign of an important bottom that just formed. We got to see a little more follow through, of course.
Yeah,
but it's in a time band for a primary bottom. But, you know, as you look longer term, I'm still of the opinion that this is a bear market, and the rally, if it's going to be bullish, it's got to last more than 5 weeks. I don't think this rally is going to last more than 5 weeks in gold.
Yeah. Well, Ray, we are running out of time today. So the last market that I want to talk about with you is Bitcoin, because, you know, we're in the time band for a half primary cycle low here. And, you know, some important geocosmics coming up, and, you know, we're holding support. We've been talking about the $21,000 area. We dip below that today, but we're right back in this as Bitcoin only has a few hours left in its trading day for the 10th of March.
That was pretty good, doesn't it? I think our target, the target you and I both had was around 20,000, give or take about 1,000.
Yeah.
And And we went to that and we were looking for it to take out that low that we had maybe, what, 5 or 6 weeks ago there.
Yeah,
it took that out, which is a sign of a half primary bottom. I don't think it's going to take out the lows we had back in November. And one more thing I want to say about this, you led us in MMTA 2, the second rendition we had of the Merriman Market Timing Academy, which just ended last year. We're going to start number 3 now. But you led us into your observation of Mars, Neptune, and hard aspect. And today I went back and looked at all those Mars, Neptune, hard aspects, which you got next week. And all of the last 8 cases, a hard aspect of Mars, Neptune has correlated with a very important major half primary or primary cycle. And we're looking for a half primary cycle here.
Yeah.
It falls within 6 trading days, and most of them are within 4 trading days. And your observation has held up here with this study I did today.
Well, hopefully we get to follow through next week to give us another study.
Yes,
on that. So
that's right.
Well, Ray, that's all the time that we have to review markets today. So just want to take a moment to thank you for joining us today. In terms of announcements, the main 2 things I want to talk about is we have the monthly publication of the MMA cycles report early next week on the 13th and 14th of March. That's the flagship MMA report. It's been in publication for what, 42 years now, Ray?
Since 1982, yes. So
Or 41 years.
41 years. Going
41 years. Okay. So definitely pick up a copy of that. You can find it at www.mmacycles.com. And then the second very important announcement is that there's only 5 days left in registration for the 3rd rendition of the Merriman Market Timing Academy. We're starting that back up next weekend on the 18th of March. So time is running out to sign up. Class is almost full, so we're running out of space anyway. So send me a note if you're interested. And Ray, any final words before we wrap up?
I'm really excited about this group that's coming in. We got some very interesting professional people, some very good astrologers are coming in too, but I'm really impressed with some of these people from some major banks in the world that are going to be joining us. And I think it's going to be a great combination of people in MMTA 3. Looking forward to it.
Indeed. So the details can be found at www.mmacycles.com. Thank you everyone for watching. Have a great weekend.